So from the very start of our rehearsal process, the company worked really well collaboratively and as an ensemble. It was very clear from the beginning that we had all had a common interest in physical theatre, and this is what drove our project. It meant that we very quickly moved from our research into our practical rehearsals. This really aided us because it saved a lot of time at the beginning of the process, so we were able to experiment with our ideas and explore what worked and what didn't in more depth than maybe we would have done if we didn't have enough time. We had a really clear idea from the very beginning what we wanted our final production to look like. This was really beneficial to us because it meant that when we were facing barriers or challenges, it enabled us to be able to think beyond where we were and to each take a step in and work collaboratively to overcome those barriers. It also pieced together the through line of the piece so that we were always very clear about where we were going and what we wanted to achieve. One of the reasons why our ideas were so strong from the start is because we chose very carefully the practitioners that we wanted to look at. These included Bill T. Jones, Pina Bausch and DB8. Coupling these together created a really strong base for us to use as a springboard to develop our ideas. While we were working, we very quickly established that a lot of the members of the company had strong leadership skills. This could have posed a problem to us. However, because we had a very clear narrative of our piece and it was going to be structured in monologue form, it meant that each member of the company could take charge over a particular element of the performance and guide it in the way that they chose. At the start of our process, one member of the group decided that they didn't want to be directly involved in all of the scenes. This affected the whole group as it meant that as we were bonding and creating work as an ensemble, one person was always missing or left out, and it also posed problems when we were creating transactions as they weren't so smooth because we had to consider getting this member on and off the stage. Because it would look odd to an audience when the rest of the company are continuously on stage, we then decided later on in the process that he would have to be involved in each of the scenes. Over time, we were able to reduce the anxieties which were causing this member of the company to not want to be involved so much. And as our performance was based around the theme of anxiety, it meant that we could incorporate it into our performance and make it a positive attribute rather than a negative attribute. As our performance was immersive, we came across a couple of barriers during our rehearsal process. As we didn't have an audience to come in and watch us, we had to be very aware of where we wanted to place our audience throughout the performance. As it's highly physical, we didn't want the audience to get hurt or to get in the way while we were performing these moves or motifs. To tackle this issue, in our later rehearsals, we invited a select audience in to watch our work in progress. This way we could understand how an audience would move within our piece, and it gave us more time to establish the connections between the scenes and how long it would take to move the audience into the particular places that we needed them to be. We also came across a struggle when we were looking at the text for our performance. As physical theatre is mainly based around expressing your emotions through your physicality, we wanted to include some text to support this. However, during one of our rehearsals we had some feedback which suggested that the language that we were using wasn't as loud as the performances that we were giving. We had to find a way to make the language just as loud as the physicality of the motifs we had created. So we went back to our text and we revisited each scene individually and to find either existing texts that we could then use and build on and make our own, or whether we could use the text we had already created to put a rhythm to it to express what we were saying in the same way that we were performing it. During our early rehearsals, we had some feedback from one of our tutors which explained that we were looking at the performance as a goal rather than the steps that we needed to take at that moment in time to create the performance. Looking back, I would have liked to have done this slightly differently and to have been aware of this maybe from the very start so that we could work as a group to take steps forwards every week rather than focusing on what we imagined it to be like and what we hoped it would be like, and having all these big ideas which weren't necessarily ideas that we could actually achieve. Another thing that we could have done differently from the start would be to look at published texts and plays. As we are physical theatre students, our language that we wrote and the scripts that we created didn't have a strong level of performance in them. I would have liked to have looked at pre-existing scripts and anything following the theme that we had already decided that we were going to look at, to see if we could support our text with anything that's already been published. And finally, I would have liked to have filmed rehearsals from the very beginning. This way we could have used it as a self-analysis tool every week, looking back at what we achieved and what we would like to achieve in the future. I think this is something that's really important and I would like to do in my further projects, as I think self-analysis is a really good way of making work and understanding the positives and the negatives of the work that you're producing.